Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video we are going to look at this Work Tuff Gear JX Omega designed by Chris Tanner of Prepared Mind 101. Now at this point this has gone through some very significant field use. On a recent hiking, camping, and backpacking trip, I did bring this JX Omega as my literal one tool option. If there's anything you know about Chris Tanner, he does do a nice job with design, and at that, this here being a perfect one tool option. Now, the question is it perfect? I'm going to start this entire video by saying I'm actually very impressed. This performed extremely well, did exactly what I needed very well, is overall very capable of being carried fairly easy, and well, if it's anything like the rest of Work Tuff Gear's knives, it is tough as nails. You cannot beat it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to roll in all of that field use footage, then we're going to come back to the studio and I'm going to go through this in a little more detail. But with that said, I have a whole bunch to do and a whole bunch to share with you, and if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about what I'm about to get into, do me a favor, stay tuned. Now before we get too far, I would like to say thank you very much to one of my subscribers, Abel Rosario, who did provide this for review. Thanks a lot, man. And so now getting the JX Omega out into the field on a deep mountain wilderness trip. This was used over the course of 2 days and 2 nights. Now all the footage you see here from the first night, well, the conditions over the second night weren't quite as easy because it rained a huge amount of the time the night before, so everything was wet. But in this case here, not too bad, reasonable conditions, and starting by carving myself a baton. Now here you can see doing some of the limbing tasks. This is where the JX Omega absolutely shines, having a good overall handle length, good balance, and the ability to do these limbing tasks with ease. Blazing down through all of these limbs, getting this prepared, and actually getting myself some good dry kindling to start my fire. The JX Omega with good balance and a nice bite and the ability to just literally blaze right through these branches, no problem at all, and making fairly quick and easy work out of this, and by the end of this getting a nice pile pulled together and really getting some good quality kindling for my fire. Now the good thing is we had 5 people working on getting the firewood prepared, so I took on the batoning tasks. Now you can see some of these were already pre-cut with a saw, but at the same time doing the batoning tasks here and splitting down through these logs. Now my baton in this case was definitely too light. I struggled with it to get this started, but at the same time you can see the JX Omega doing a great job in splitting down through the wood with ease. Getting down through the initial piece might have been just a little bit of work, but with a heavier baton, it definitely would have worked better. The high saber grind doing a nice job, splitting down through the wood, very easy, absolutely blowing the wood apart in half, and with the long handle, the ability for me to keep it balanced, it worked out very, very well. Now just a couple times with the knife getting stuck. The nice thing was, well, with the long handle and the saber grind, I'm able to get it out easily. The chopping tasks, the JX Omega, absolutely fantastic. So getting these sticks and really breaking them down, getting them into smaller, manageable pieces, this is really where the JX Omega does a fantastic job. Good bite, deep penetration, and the ability for the belly just to really bury deep. You'll notice here, digging deep into this log, this absolutely has serious bite. And the long handle doing a fantastic job. Now being a saber grind and with the Work Tuff Gear knives having a convex edge, no problem at all. This is where the JX Omega really does shine. So comfortable in the hand, indexing well, no fear that it was going to fly away from me, and I didn't find that I really needed to re-grip all too often. I do have to say I'm very happy with the performance and the chopping tasks. So far with the limbing and so far with the chopping, the JX Omega absolutely fantastic. And if we didn't have a saw and this was all I had, well, the ability to do these heavier chopping tasks would absolutely save me. But now getting into a little more work and really carving a more suitable baton now that I have some additional pieces in my hands, this here doing a nice job. So getting a good grip on the knife, doing some of these carving and slicing tasks, you can see here the JX Omega doing a wonderful job. Now, using a couple different grips, I do find that overall I prefer having a little more of the meat of the handle in my hand. Now I felt as though I had a little bit better angle on the edge geometry to do some of the carving tasks rather than getting further up on the finger choil. The further up position working okay for the detailed tasks, but I did find I really did prefer that full-handled grip. But making overall fairly quick work out of this, carving down the handle on my baton. This is going to be absolutely instrumental for me to get to work for the rest of this trip. I did have a couple of different fires, and having a good baton, that is absolutely important. And now you can see doing a much better job splitting with the JX Omega, no problem, getting down through these logs with ease. Now the hardest thing I had was actually finding firm enough ground, so you'll notice trying to be, for the most part, pretty careful in working down on this rock. I did find that a couple times I came fairly close, but Work Tuff doing a great job with their heat treat. I was absolutely capable of doing this with ease. Now the overall length of this being a little unorthodox, you'll notice that I accidentally nipped myself. Not a big deal, but I definitely had myself a bleeder. After a quick little bandage, well, let's just keep moving here, getting down and through the wood and batoning right down. You'll see doing a good job splitting, and I found as though from time to time I just simply had to come off the rock and pound it down into the ground. But again, the JX Omega having that long handle, giving me the ability to balance the knife very easily and straighten it out. Now the saber grind doing a great job where it's not going to bind. If this was a flat grind, it would have struggled, but having that saber grind absolutely perfectly positioned, the JX Omega doing a wonderful job. And the fact that you have so much handle length and blade before and after the piece of wood gives you the ability to really hammer down both on the tip and on the spine and really gives you plenty of blade to work with. Even some of the longer pieces, definitely leveraging this and the ability to baton from the top all the way to the bottom. It really didn't take too much effort, and the JX Omega did a great job. I do have to say, I am extremely happy with the performance of this knife. And a little accidental oopsie, well, catching this rock just a little bit. That's going to leave a little mark, but nothing that can't get taken out with a bit of a ceramic rod and honing it with a leather strop. But the show must go on. We'll get through the rest of this batoning, and we can move on. Now what about those finer tasks? Well, this is the time where you get a little further up on the choil. So for me, getting on that forward grip and really leveraging as much balance on the knife as I can, keeping this a little more balanced in the hand, a little more handle weighted, and you can see the edge geometry and the grind on this is absolutely fantastic. This does a wonderful job getting some nice curls and the ability to really carve down the wood with ease. I love Work Tuff Gear's convex edge. I think they do a wonderful job with the edge geometry, and it's really easy to find that grind angle. Sometimes with a new knife, you do struggle a little bit to find that angle. Well, that's not the case with Work Tuff Gear. And anytime they have a 3/16 of an inch stock and then that nice convex edge, they do a great job keeping enough meat behind the edge, yet also maintaining sliceability. That's a fantastic aspect with Work Tuff Gear knives, and that is definitely the case here with the JX Omega. Now, using the back of the spine, this is sharpened, which is nice. I like the idea that you can really use this to get some fluff, really fuzz out some of your kindling and tinder, and really get a fire started with ease. This is instrumental in getting some good, dry, flammable material ready to go so that when you build your little nest and you get your tinder bundle all prepared, this fluff is absolutely key. It's a critical step in preparing your fire, and this is worth taking the time to do it. So the fact that the JX Omega has a sharpened spine, this is definitely sweet. And you can see here ripping on this ferro rod. Good thing I prepared my materials. This was a single strike, single spark, and instantaneous start to my fire. So the preparation paid off, and getting my fire fully prepared, well, this definitely set us up for success, where at this point we can relax, enjoy the rest of our night, have a good fire for cooking, keeping the bugs away, a little bit of light, and definitely bringing some energy to us as the sun went down. So all right, guys, there you have it. Some field use looking at this JX Omega in, and I'm not going to say a true survival situation, but bottom line is I really did rely on this heavily to perform all my tasks, and it did extremely well. Now, what are some of my big takeaways? The overall length of this definitely lending itself very well to a multitude of tasks. Getting back, doing the chopping, getting forward, some of those finer tasks, and everything in the middle. Now, did every grip feel perfect? No, but every grip worked well and was functional. The overall size, shape, balance, the weight, the carry capability, I am actually very impressed at this knife. I like it very much. Now, do I have some critiques? Of course I do. We'll get into that just a little bit, but I do want to have a little bit of a discussion here to show you some of the finer points. And so all in all, the JX Omega performing extremely well. Now, to give you some of the finer points here, let's go through this in a little bit of detail. Here, the blade length, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and just shy of 1/2 inches. You end up with pretty much like 1.5 inches, call it finger choil area, which is very interesting. So like a 3/4 round here, which most of the time a full finger choil is closer to 1 inch. So you get that roughly 3/4 round and another 3/4 round here, which gives you a couple different indexing points. Nice palm swell through the middle, and the overall handle here being, and I would say roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 inches. So overall, roughly a 15.5 inch overall length, which is a pretty good size. And while I have this just sitting beside me here, this here is the Becker BK9. Now, I'm not going into this saying, oh, the blade shape looks like a Becker blade shape. I've heard that a few times. No, it doesn't. Like literally, no, it doesn't. Is it sort of a, call it like Bowie style in a way? Yeah, sure. Does it have, a little bit of belly and a straight edge? Yeah, sure. But rest assured, this is definitely not the same shape as a Becker blade. So I'm going to get that out there right away. But the reason why I bring this for the comparison, these are actually both almost the exact same overall length, yet a dramatic different size in terms of the overall blade length. Now that's important because, well, look at the length of the handle. Now, granted, with the BK9, yeah, you can do a lot of those multi-use tasks, like some of the chopping tasks, some of the splitting tasks, some of the finer tasks. You can also do all the same stuff here with the JX Omega. But the difference being, you end up with a lot more handle, which gives this a completely different balance. Now, I'm going to have to get a little bit creative here. Actually, if I can do this from the side, you can see this balance point is roughly right around there. Now, I typically like a little more balance up towards the choil, but of course you have a ton of handle here. Now I'm curious what's beneath these scales to see if there's any sort of skeletonizing, because that is one place to lose a little mass. If you look at the overall thickness and the amount of G10 on this handle, and I can tell you Work Tuff Gear uses a very dense and heavy G10, that adds a huge amount of handle weight, which does two things. It actually leaves the knife feeling generally very wieldy when you're trying to use it for the lighter tasks, but at the same time leaves it a little less, and I would call it like neutrally balanced if that's something you like. It also takes away just a little bit from the forward mass, just because you are kind of weighting this a little more towards the back. Now, granted, if you were to skeletonize, you'd be losing overall mass, I'll give you that. But just in terms of the distribution of the overall weight, it is a little more handle weighted than blade heavy. And so removing one of the scales real quick, as I thought, not too much in the way of skeletonizing. You can see here, they did do a little bit of, I'd say just one single hole, just for a little weight reduction. Now, this is probably something that Chris worked out with Work Tuff Gear, if I had to guess. So could they potentially balance this out just a little bit better? In my opinion, I'd say yes, but it wouldn't take much. I wouldn't go crazy. Maybe taking this from one hole to evenly spacing out maybe 4 holes. Do you lose integrity? Well, with a 3/16 stock like this, I'm not terribly concerned. I feel like there's plenty of room, plenty of depth on the handle there to buy enough space. So overall, do I think they should skeletonize this a little bit more? Honestly, yes, I do. Just a bit, just enough to maybe get a little more balance and really make it a little more neutrally balanced, but overall, definitely very good. I do have to say I like it, and the fact that it's a little handle weighted still does leave this plenty nimble. Now, covering the different grips, you definitely get a full handle worth of grips. If there's anything you've come to learn from Chris Tanner and his design philosophy, he does love the multi-position grip. That's absolutely the case with the JX Omega. Now, the obvious one, choking way back, doing those chopping tasks, you could see it worked extremely well. Good balance overall. Nice indexing. This palm swell in the back here is ample to really keep your fingers locked in. It's not overly aggressive and it's fairly well rounded. Overall, I found it did a nice job keeping the knife firmly planted in my hands. The middle grip here, I probably didn't use this grip really at all for much, to be honest with you. I was really a little bit further back for the chopping or further forward. Now, this grip here was probably my favorite, where I was able to do the bulk of my carving and the knife definitely feeling nice and balanced. As you saw me talking about that more central balance point, well, that's more right here than it is further up. And I found that it was really comfortable in my hand. That's nicely softened and rounded out, no problem. Felt really good in my hands, and that to me was the most comfortable for like heavier duty carving. Now, in some cases, I did choke up a little more, which would be more of that controlled grip. But the problem I found is there's that little bit of a point. So again, this is more like a 3/4 choil than a full-size choil. And I found that for me, it's just a little bit of a hot spot there. Not a huge deal, and it is reasonably rounded, but not quite as comfortable as getting a little further back. So for me, I found this grip was a little bit more conducive to the heavier carving than moving forward. But again, nice to have that control if you need it. And when you do get all the way up on that forward choil, you can see index finger, middle finger, ring finger, just nicely grabbing on there. So this does feel pretty good and does a nice job. Now the spine being sharpened does lend to a little bit of, I would say, and I'm not going to say it's sharp on your thumb, but not quite as comfortable as for me, just being back here a little bit, and that's not quite sharpened right there. So this to me is definitely more of the carving grip in my opinion, but overall, this knife having multiple grips, they do all work pretty well. And one of the things that I learned because of this, and I'm not going to call it at all awkward, okay? I am not going to call this awkward geometry because it's not at all. It's just unorthodox. It is not what you typically see, it's not what you typically get, and it's not what you're probably typically used to. And if that's the case, I found myself doing some funny things with this that I don't usually do, which is part of the reason why, well, I kind of ended up nipping myself. It wasn't a big deal by the end of it, just a little bit of a cut, but I was just doing things with the knife in a way I find I don't usually do it. I would need to get like a little more used to this and just a little more familiar with using it on a regular basis to get away from some of those things that just were, and I'm not going to say completely unsafe, I just wasn't as safe as I probably should have been. Now, all in all, the edge holding up very well. You can see after all that work, and I've literally just washed the knife a little bit. I mean, I have not completely touched this up or anything like that. Still very, very sharp for the most part. Really catching, except for in some of these areas towards the belly. Right there, now I'm starting to slide out a bit. But generally speaking, very good. Now, I do have just some minor chips. That will come out no problem with a little strop and some ceramic rod work. That's going to be easy. I also have a tiny little bit of what looks to be, can't tell if it's a chip or a little bit of a roll, but that will also, for the most part, come out completely. So Work Tuff Gear doing a fantastic job with their SK85, and that is definitely the case with the JX Omega. Now the stock sheath, generally very good. For the most part, I do like it. A couple things are sort of funny. I find that sometimes Work Tuff Gears, I don't know, not as precise or accurate or well thought through on some of the eyelet spacing as it could be for different types of mounts. Also here you can see just a little bit of wandering between them. So this one here looks like it's off just a little bit. Not a big deal. It doesn't really affect performance a ton. And overall, the retention on this, I would say, was reasonable. Decent click there. Not too bad. You can see I opted to use a shoulder sling, which really helped. But generally speaking, a little looser than I might like for a Kydex, especially where I tend to like to carry my fixed blades inverted, and even sometimes the larger ones. This would have been fantastic vertical on my chest, but instead you'll notice I carried it a little more horizontal, which isn't quite as conducive to the way I like to work, but it was definitely fine, served its purpose, and the sheath is certainly serviceable. And so, all in all, the JX Omega, again, I greatly enjoy this. It performed extremely well. I think Chris Tanner did a very good job with this. I mean, and I'm generally critical. I've actually liked his designs. The ones that I've held, the ones that I've used. I've had a few of them now. They've all performed well. Now, have I had all of them? No, but the ones that I've used have definitely performed. And that's absolutely the case here for the JX Omega. Now, Work Tuff Gear is a great company to work with. I mean, I have the fortune and the luxury to be working with them as well. And so to have good outside designers and guys kind of thinking outside the box and bringing those thoughts and ideas to Work Tuff Gear, it's been very, very fun, very refreshing, and really bringing some new creativity to the knife world. And especially when you're talking hard use, well, that's where Work Tuff shines. So working together with Work Tuff, Chris Tanner, nice job. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.